You're listening to Science for Soundness, the podcast. This is not your usual podcast. This is a journey, and as with any journey, I don't know yet where this one is going. If anything, I'm hoping to inspire you to take the first step, even if it's into the unknown, even if you don't know where you're going and you do it scared. Hi, I'm Steffi. I'm an equine scientist and equine therapist. I've made it my mission to support horse owners on their individual journey of horse-human connection and personal growth. I want you to know that I'm with you on this one. Think of me as a friendly voice, a reminder to stay the course, to keep going, keep listening to yourself and to your horse, even when the going gets tough. Let's do this. Hello and welcome back to Science for Soundness, the podcast. Today, I want to have a conversation that might feel a little uncomfortable, but it is one that we need to have. Just this week, I posted something saying the equine industry doesn't want you to change, but I do. And I did not anticipate the effect that it had and how hard it landed for some people. It really struck a nerve because the equine industry doesn't want you to change. It doesn't want you to question the system. It doesn't want you to see the gaps in traditional training. And it doesn't want you to realize that the way we've been taught to work with horses is built on control, not connection. But I do. And if you're here listening to this, I already know that you feel it too. So let me ask you, have you ever had this moment? You watch a trainer push a horse through stress, fear, or even pain, and something deep inside you says, this isn't right. You've learned the traditional way, but you can't shake the feeling that your horse isn't truly happy or thriving. You've tried to question methods before, but you were shut down or gaslit, told you were being too soft, too emotional, or too naive. I know what that feels like because I've been there too. And today, we're unpacking why this happens, why it's so hard to break free, and what it actually takes to step into a better way. So let's dive on in. Why does the equine industry not want you to change? Let's be clear, the industry doesn't resist change because it doesn't know better. It resists change because the entire system depends on people not questioning it. For generations, the equine industry has operated in a top-down, obedience-based system. We've been conditioned to believe that if a horse doesn't comply, we need to be stronger, firmer, or more persistent. That if a horse resists, they are being naughty, stubborn, or dominant, whatever that looks like. That if we don't demand respect, we will lose control. And this is so deeply ingrained that people don't even question it. Think back to the first time you ever worked with horses. What were you taught back then? Were you told to push through resistance, no matter what that looks like in your horse? Were you taught that horses test, in air quotes, their handlers? Were you taught that a well-trained horse is one that doesn't say no, ever? That's the first layer of conditioning. And the moment we stop questioning, we reinforce that system. Over and over and over again. But here's the thing. This system isn't about connection. It's about control. And we see this play out in so many ways. For example, horses that are deemed or called lazy. What does traditional training say? It says they're testing you. They're being stubborn. You need to be firm and reinforce your cue. So kick harder. Use a crop. But what is actually happening? The horse is in a nervous system freeze response. They're so shut down that they physically can't respond. And more pressure doesn't solve the problem, it actually deepens the shutdown experience. What about the opposite? A horse that is supposedly explosive all the time and needs reining in. What does the industry say? They need more exposure. You have to push him through it. Whatever that looks like. It could be pointing them towards some stressing or distressing stimulus over and over again. And the industry also says they'll calm down if you make him face it enough times. Okay, but what's actually happening here? This horse is in a flight mode. Being explosive just means they are in a state where they are overwhelmed by a stressor and they are in a state of flight, their survival. Forcing them through it doesn't make them braver. It makes them more fearful, not just of the stimulus, but possibly also from you. Exposing a horse to a scary stimulus over and over and over again might also flood their nervous system, which then often leads to learned helplessness, which we, or the industry in return, mistake for calmness. And then example number 3, what about the well-behaved horse? What does the industry say? Oh, look how perfect and quiet they are. Look, they never put a foot wrong. This is the ideal schoolmaster. But what is actually happening? These horses are very often either in a state of learned helplessness or shut down. They have been shut down so many times that they stop trying to express themselves. This thing that looks like good behavior is actually emotional suppression. Can you see the pattern? Can you see how the equine industry doesn't teach people to read nervous system responses, because the moment you do, the entire system unravels? This isn't just about individual trainers being stuck in their ways. It's about a multi-billion-dollar industry that thrives on keeping people in the dark. Because the second you start questioning, the entire structure is at risk of collapse. The industry is built on profit, not welfare. Let's talk about this very clearly. The industry makes money off problems. Think about it. If people truly understood their horses' nervous systems, if they recognized that stress responses were being mistaken for bad behavior, if they saw the way learned helplessness is sold as good training, would people still spend thousands on equipment designed to contain behavior instead of understanding it? Would people still pay for training methods that focus on obedience instead of communication? And would they still believe that submission equals respect? And this is exactly why the industry resists change, because, like I said, the moment you wake up to this, you stop feeding the system. Let's break this down even further. Think of all the products and services that exist solely to fix problem horses. And yes, air quotes. Special bits, harsh bridles, training aids designed to correct behavior, whips, spurs, control-focused tack marketed as necessary tools for discipline, training programs that promise a horse that listens, respects, and obeys. And now let me ask you, but what if your horse was never broken? What if they didn't need fixing? What if they just needed to feel safe? That would dismantle an entire segment of the equine economy. And this is exactly why you don't see nervous system education mainstream in the equestrian world. Because if people truly understood this, they would stop paying for quick fix training techniques. They would stop relying on harsher bits and restrictive tack. And they would stop feeding into the idea that obedience equals partnership. And that terrifies the industry, because the more educated horse owners become, the less they can be manipulated into fear-based purchasing. Let's talk about the industry protecting authority, not truth. Ever noticed how much pushback people get when they suggest a different way? Like the second you say that maybe we should rethink traditional training, you're told you're being too soft. The second you suggest that nervous system regulation matters, people dismiss you as too emotional. The moment you prioritize connection over compliance, you're told that's not how the real world works. This isn't just random pushback. This is how the industry keeps its authority intact. It doesn't just train horses to comply, no, it actually trains people to comply too. And this is hard to understand and accept. Trainers don't want to lose their control over the narrative. Big equestrian brands don't want people questioning their products. Even competition systems are built on outdated performance-driven ideals. So questioning any of this is seen as dangerous, because the moment people start questioning trainers, they stop blindly following them. The moment people stop blindly following them, they stop paying them. And this is why the industry clings so tightly to tradition. So you might be wondering what happens when we actually wake up though. And here's what happens when people start to do. They stop seeking quick fixes and start learning about the nervous system. They stop forcing obedience and start building actual trust. They start reading their horse's emotional states instead of just correcting behavior. And that is exactly why you will always be met with resistance when you try to change. You will have people tell you you're wrong, you will have trainers dismiss you, and you will have other riders criticize you, not because you're wrong, but because your change threatens the way they've built their reality. So, how do we actually break the cycle? Breaking the cycle requires 3 massive shifts in perspective. Breaking the cycle isn't just about learning something new, it's about rewiring our responses mentally, emotionally, physically, and therefore also spiritually. So, step 1, awareness. Recognize the pattern. See the industry for what it is and ask yourself, where do I still react from fear instead of trust? When do I feel like I have to prove something instead of listen? We need to accept that what we were taught might be wrong. And that's hard because no one likes to admit they've been part of a flawed system. But without acceptance and awareness, there is no change. This isn't about blame. This is about growth. What if, instead of resisting, we leaned into curiosity instead? Step 2, rewiring. When your horse hesitates, pause, take a breath. Ask yourself, is this resistance or is it a nervous system state? Is it dysregulation? Is this disobedience or is it maybe fear? Is this my horse's problem or is it mine? That one small pause is the moment everything changes. We need to rewire our own nervous systems first. If we are tense, they become tense. If we are frustrated, they start to brace. If we are rushing, they start to shut down. So before we ever ask a horse to relax, we have to ask ourselves, am I showing up in a way that invites safety? Am I truly relaxed right now? Because true connection starts inside of us first. And then step 3, support and integration. That is why I literally created a training called Breaking the Survival Loop, a training designed to help you recognize when your horse is in survival mode, understand what's really happening in the nervous system, and learn how to shift from reaction to regulation to then real connection. This training is inside the Inner Circle, where we go deep into these topics every single month. We need to be willing to do things differently, even when others don't understand yet. Some will tell you that you're letting your horse get away with things, and others will say that you're not a real horse person, whoever decides that. Some will make fun of you or the fact that you're too soft. But here's the truth. Doing what's right isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. And that is exactly what we do inside the Inner Circle. As a special thank you for listening to today's episode, you get a €10 off your first month in the Inner Circle. Just use the code podcast when you sign up at scienceforsoundness.com. And before we end today's episode, I want you to try this thing with your horse, where you go through the 3 steps that we just talked about. Because awareness is powerful, but action is what rewires the pattern. So here's what I want you to do today or the next time you see your horse. Step 1, observe them. What do you see? Where is tension? Do they have any tension at all, or are they showing softness? Just dive into that. Observe. Don't judge, just observe. Then step 2, maybe change your approach. So what happens if, for example, your horse is in a state of fight or flight and you start to soften? What happens if you start to focus on your breathing? Are they joining you in this moment? Are they continuing to run? What happens if you slow down? Are they maybe slowing down with you and managing to come out of that survival state and be present again, just try and change your approach a little bit. And step 3, reflect. It's really good to always reassess the things that worked and that didn't work. So ask yourself, did something shift or did it stay the same? And then just try and make a mental note of that. Go out and try this today and then come back and tell me what you noticed if you like. All right, my friends. The equine industry might not want you to change, but I do. And more importantly, your horse does too. The more we learn, the more we unlearn as well. The more we question, the more we start to grow. And the more we pause, the more we actually listen. Let's shift the conversation together. If you loved this episode, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're ready to dive deeper, head to scienceforsoundness.com or check the show notes and join us inside the inner circle. I know we would love to have you in there. Until next time, friends. Hi, friend. I hope you found something in this episode that resonated with you. I'm beyond grateful that you hung out with me today for a little while, and I do hope that you come along for the ride. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, and if you feel like it, leave a review. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. If you have any questions or would like me to talk about a certain topic, check the show notes for ways to get in touch. I can't wait for next time. You got this.